Welcome back to another episode of the Find Food Freedom podcast. We need to get like a jingle for this series, I feel like. Something related to dating and marriage. Maybe we need to like pull clips from really famous movies or something of like one-liners. I feel like there's something we could really do here. But welcome to the dating and marriage series. This was the most highly requested topic on Instagram. And it's funny because I didn't expect that. I honestly threw this one in last minute and I'm glad I did. But I put up an Instagram poll that said, which of these topics would you like me to do a series on? And dating and marriage blew all of the other ones out of the water. So I'm starting here. That doesn't mean we're not going to go do the other series, but the other series we're including, but not limited to infertility, trying to conceive, pregnancy, postpartum. I forget what else we threw up there, but again, dating and marriage just blew it out of the water. So then when that happened, I said, okay, what obstacles do you have around dating and marriage? And that's where the question box blew up. I woke up today with hundreds and hundreds of messages, everything from people who are afraid to put themselves out there to people who have been married for 20 plus years, everywhere in between. And so that's where I was like, okay, I cannot fit all of this into one podcast. So we're going to do a 4-part series. Today is the first part of the series where we're going to be talking. This one is called Dating in Diet Culture. Now, before we get into dating in diet culture, not dating with diet culture, dating in diet culture, and we're going to get to why I chose that name in a second. I want to share our Find Food Freedom win of the week. And this one, as I was scrolling through my screenshots, my hundreds of screenshots, because yes, I do read every direct message until our account gets into the millions. One can only dream. Right now, I have the ability to read every message. So send me a DM, send me your Find Food Freedom win of the week, and you can potentially get featured on here. Now, unfortunately, this one was like, it was way back when I would screenshot them, and I don't have the person's first name. So this one's from anonymous, but I promise moving forward, and I've said this on the podcast before, I will make sure to screenshot them with your first name so I can call you out and you can get featured on here, which I think is exciting. And it allows me to connect with you a little bit more. So this is the Find Food Freedom win of the week. This is from a few months back. And again, this is from anonymous, and it ties into today's episode. So they wrote in, before I found you, I thought I needed to work out nonstop and forever live in a calorie deficit to prepare for my wedding. But about 6 months ago, I found you and intuitive eating, and it changed my life. I learned to love the body I'm in and treat it kindly. And guess what? I've never felt more beautiful than I did yesterday at my wedding, and didn't care one bit that I never lost a single pound before it. Lucky for me, I also have a partner who has loved me at every single size I've been in over the past 8 years. God bless you for the work that you do and the message you're spreading. So I thank you so much to Anonymous who sent this in. And I feel like this is such a great win to start with when we're kicking off a dating series of somebody who found intuitive eating, found the Find Food Freedom accounts before marriage, and then got to enjoy their wedding day for exactly what it was, one of the most beautiful, memorable days of your life, and they got to be present instead of obsessing about food and body. So hell to the freaking yes, celebrating this person. And if you're listening to this where you're like, I'm engaged, or I think I'm going to be engaged soon, or I want to be engaged someday, we might have to add, now I'm reading this, I'm like, oh shit, we might have to add another episode into the dating and marriage series of just like wedding diet culture stuff, because there's a lot. All right, but we got to get into today. So dating in diet culture. I also wrote up on the top of my notes, AKA dating. And what I mean by that is if you are dating, you're dating in diet culture, because diet culture is all around you. Unless you do not leave your home and you stay in your home all day like a hermit, you're going to experience diet culture. Now, there's a difference of like triggers of diet culture happening to you and actively participating in diet culture. But if you choose to date or put yourself out there, you're going to be exposed to diet culture, whether that's the partner that you're dating, whether that's going to a restaurant and the calories on the menu or the skinny margarita on the menu, right? Like there's so many ways that diet culture comes into play here. So I like to highlight that because I think sometimes normalizing that can make us feel at ease in a sense of like, it's not our job to escape diet culture. If that was your job, like I said, you would never leave your house. The goal here is to be able to date. And when you're exposed to diet culture triggers, just take a deep breath, let it roll off your shoulder and carry on living your life, because you're going to be so sure of who you are and what your morals and values and beliefs are around food and body that we're not going to let it shake us, whether we're dating or not. Like you're going to be so firmly rooted. So I say dating and diet culture, not because I want you actively dating someone who's entrenched in diet culture, although that might happen, but more so because it's like, no matter what we do, we can't escape diet culture. There's truly no way to escape it. So it's more so learning to set boundaries for ourselves. So myself and my co-host Jenna Warner from What the Actual Fork podcast, we had Lindsay from We Met at Acme on our podcast. And we did a whole episode on like dating related to food and body image. So I highly recommend going to listen to that one too, because Jenna and I share more about our stories. But that's where I wanted to use that as a jumping off point, because it's so interesting to think about like now. So I'm married. I've been married for over 6 years now, which is fucking insane to say that out loud. I like in my brain, I'm still in college, so that doesn't really make sense when I say that. So if I'm married now, right? I'm not actively in the dating scene. And so I recognize that. And so please know I'm coming at this from an elder millennial standpoint. And myself and the Find Food Freedom team, we do support clients of all ages and a lot of clients who are actively dating right now. So not only are we pulling from the Instagram Q&A box of people that wrote in, but also client experiences and conversations that we've had. So let's talk about dating apps. That was something that we got a lot of questions about. Well, actually, let's tee up the 4 things I want to talk about today. Dating apps, your goals and aspirations while dating, your beliefs about self, and characteristics that you're looking for in a partner. So those are the 4 things that we're going to talk about today, because I want to give you my best big sister advice of if you are actively dating, you feel surrounded by diet culture, you feel like you don't know how to navigate these waters, this is what I want to talk about with you. So before we go to dating apps, let's talk about your beliefs, because we had so many people write in, I'm not worthy to date because of the size of my body. I am too big to date. The list goes on and on and on. Those are just some of the ones I wrote down. Now, something I should have started with before we got into today's episode, so let me backtrack here, is I acknowledge my privileges. I am a thin, white, cis, hetero, able-bodied woman. So please know that is the lens I'm coming from, although at Find Food Freedom, we do contract and learn from many marginalized professionals. I do not reside in a marginalized body. So I understand and acknowledge my privileges and how my perspective is going to be different. But with all of that being said, I want you to know that like, I hear you. And if you're someone who is saying, I am not worthy, I am too big, et cetera, if we remove this conversation from dating and just really look at what these beliefs are saying, is that fat is bad. That's really what, or like larger bodies are less than, right? And so when it comes to dating, now this is going to be so individualized. This is such a nuanced conversation. But some clients that we work with, before they start actively dating, we need to work on our belief systems around their own body and bodies in general. Because if you show up to a date and you don't believe that you deserve to be there, and you don't believe that your body is good and deserves acceptance, it's very hard to put yourself out there. And we should never be looking for acceptance from other people before ourselves. Like, it has to start here. So I use this part of today's episode to really challenge you to ask yourself these questions, to remove the guilt and shame and say, do I believe that I'm worthy to go on a date? Do I believe that my body is good and or neutral or worthy? And so if the answer is no, searching for a partner to fulfill that for you is not what I would suggest. I would suggest working on self first before we put ourselves out there. And that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to actively date. But what I do know is that from being a professional who supports people with body image, if we have very low self-esteem and very low self-worth, what we put out there is what we attract. And we want you feeling confident and comfortable and accepted, so then you can find someone who matches that energy. So if you're someone who's like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's totally me, I really, really, really want to encourage you to reach out for support, whether that's our team at Find Food Freedom, or there are thousands upon thousands of certified intuitive eating professionals, body image therapists online that can help you feel neutral about your body so you can show up and be present. So this kind of naturally takes us to the next pillar. So we talked about your beliefs. We really need to flush those out. I don't want to say before going in the dating scene, because I don't want people to feel like they can't date, but I'll use myself as an example. I absolutely dated before I met my husband. I dated people when I was deeply entrenched, hated my body, had a terrible relationship with food. And I think back to those dates, and this again goes to the next pillar that we're going to talk about as well. Like, what are your goals with dating? I couldn't enjoy the dates. There was no chance of having fun on the date, because all I cared about was, what does my body look like? Does he like me? Right? How many calories is in this dish? I don't want to eat too much in front of him, right? Like it's all of these things that are just swirling in my head where I couldn't be present. And that's where this next pillar, I said, what are your goals with dating? If I ask you that, remove diet culture, remove the guilt, remove the shame, remove food, remove body. Why do you want to date? Is it to find a life partner? Is it to be present and feel love and accepted? Is it to have sexual pleasure? Like, what is your goal? And I'm going to go back to the first one, just because I feel like most people and again, I'm stereotyping definitely here. So let me go back, remove most people. I'm going to say myself. When I was dating because I wanted to find a life partner, right? How on this earth are you supposed to find a life partner while you're dating if the entire time you're like, am I eating too many calories? I shouldn't be eating this. What do I look like? Oh my God, my jeans are so tight. Oh my God, I hate my body. I hope he doesn't notice how fat like my stomach is. Like, how are we supposed to find a life partner if that is the narrative going on in our head. And that is where, so like the first pillar we talked about are like, what are your beliefs about body? But also we can add to that food, because like, if you're on a date, let's say he picks like this amazing Italian restaurant and basically like the only dishes are gnocchi and raviolis and all of these amazing carb heavy dishes. If you have a terrible relationship with food, you're going to be freaking out the whole time saying like, I can't eat this. I'm not allowed to eat this. And then you'll like only order the salad. And then, right. So it's like, what are your beliefs about body? What are your beliefs about food? What are your goals with dating? Because if you want to meet your life partner, have fun and spontaneity and enjoy life, have sexual intimacy and pleasure, right? Like, you are not going to find that if you are obsessed with food and your body. And that sounds like a really harsh truth when I say it. I'm like, oh, that feels like a knife to the chest. But it's true. And I know this not only because of many client experiences, but because of self. But because when I was going through dating in my teens and my early 20s, before I found my partner, who's my now husband, I could not be present, could not enjoy the date, could not look for love with someone else when I hated myself so deeply. So this episode, I hope, helps you, and we still have 2 more pillars to get to, but I hope these first 2 pillars have helped you have some questions and some dialogue with self that you can start to look at to help set you up for dating. Now, okay, now let's talk about dating apps. I'm sorry, I like started there and now we're like, whoop, like we're going back. Okay. So dating apps. Like I shared, I have been married for 6 years. So I'm an elder millennial. I'm trying to be that big sister, giving you that advice that I wish I so badly had at the time, because I do not have a sister. So dating apps. I so happened to meet my husband on a dating app. And although I know the dating apps have changed dramatically and they're all so different, I can say, from a woman who met a man on a dating app and is now married for 6 years and has our first child together, our beautiful daughter, I can say that my experience with the dating app was positive. Now, that doesn't mean that every experience with dating apps was positive, but here's some things I can say related to diet culture and dating apps. Meeting someone on a dating app gives you the opportunity to learn things about them as much as you can, right? Now, people can lie, people can say things, of course, but you can get a pretty good idea about someone through a dating app. Like, you totally can. So first things first, like I remember one of my colleagues telling me she is single and actively dating, and she was on a dating app and the person's like main text on the dating app said keto warrior. And she was like, next, like, and she is also an anti-diet dietitian. So she was like, nope, like not even going there. And that doesn't mean you need to write out everyone that has different food and body beliefs as you. And we're going to get into that. That'll be our 4th pillar. Don't worry, we're going there. But it's pretty safe to say that if Joe Schmo's account is 8 pictures of him lifting his shirt up with his 8-pack paired with keto warrior labeled or paleo prince or whatever the fuck it says on his dating profile, it's probably a no. It's probably a swipe left, right? Which one's no? Swipe right is yes, I think. I'm out of the game. Haven't been doing it. All right. So I think that there's a benefit. You can say no to the people who are just so actively entrenched in diet culture that you know that they're going to trigger you. And for those who don't have keto warrior, and maybe they have some more normal pictures where it shows them, you know, having fun with friends and maybe doing fun activities that you're like, oh, I would like hiking, or I have a dog and he has a dog. And right. So there's some similarities. you can start to have conversation with these people. And I think of my husband, when we met on the dating app, we actually ended up texting. Now I know some people don't like texting, so don't come for me. This is just my personal story. We ended up texting for about 2 weeks before we could get to a date, not because I didn't want to go on a date right away, but because schedules, right? Busyness, out of town, whatever. So it gave me the ability to get to know him to an extent while texting. And I think that this is something that if there's certain deal breakers for you, dating apps can be helpful because you can do a little stalking and you can kind of rule out the red flags. And if nowadays, like, I don't know if FaceTime is, maybe you FaceTime them before. Because if you get the ick, if they're just like an asshole, then it's like, oh, I didn't waste any of my time. I didn't have to get all dolled up, like FaceTime, boom, done. Okay, great. So I think dating apps can be a great way to weed out the crazy keto warriors and get to know each other just enough before a date where you feel safe and you feel like there's some common ground that when you come together, you'll have things to talk about. Now that brings me to the fourth pillar, the characteristics. What characteristics are you looking for in someone? This kind of pairs with the first pillar we talked about, talking about beliefs, because so many people are so hung up on, what if he doesn't think I'm good enough? What if they don't think I'm good enough? What if they don't like me? You don't need to be worrying about their opinion. This is where I would say, see pillar one, go back to beliefs, go work with a certified intuitive eating counselor and body image therapist who can help you determine your own self-worth, because that's all that matters. Someone else's opinion of you does not matter. Your own opinion of you matters. So whenever we're talking about the person that you're going on a date with or that you're dating, I want to know from you, what are characteristics that you're looking for? Is it humor? Is it honesty? Is it timeliness, like some manners, right? Like someone showing up on time, maybe a little chivalry, like pulling out the chair. I don't know. What do you like? You need to write this down. Like, this episode is full of journal prompts because that's what you need to look for then, right? That's what you need to center when you're on the date, looking for the characteristics. I think everyone gets really caught up and they need to be this tall. And again, I'm preaching to the choir because this was me. They need to look like this. They need to be this tall. No. Think about every single loved one. And okay, let's bring it back here. Tell me the name of a loved one right now. Boom. First person that comes up, say their name out loud, type it, whatever. Think of this loved one. What are the characteristics that you love about this loved one? I want you to just off the cuff name 3 characteristics. Maybe it's their humor, maybe it's love, maybe it's loyalty, they light up a room, they always make you laugh. Okay, whatever that is. That's why you love this loved one, right? That's why you keep coming back for them. And just like you are centering the characteristics that you're going to be looking for when you're dating, I want you, before you go on a date, to write down what are your 3 best characteristics that have nothing to do with your body. Is it your humor? Is it your wit? Is it the way you light up a room? Is it the way that you're a great listener? What do your friends say about you? Why do loved ones keep showing up in your life? That's what do you love most about yourself? And some people are like, oh, this is really awkward. Like, I can't do it. Well, you need to do it. You need to have that acceptance and that awareness of self so you can align yourself with another human. Now, when it comes to diet culture and a partner. So let's say you're newly dating, you're actively dating, and this person at the table, at the date, swirling his glass of wine, he starts talking about how he's low carb. And you're like, in your head, you're like, oh, fuck, he's out. Now, hold up. Let's take a pause. If we rule out every man who's on a diet, there might be no men left. So, and I mean this like so deeply, you do not need to rule out every potential partner that has a food rule or is on a diet. Now, hear me out here, because we have to remember that the chances are, if you're listening to the Find Food Freedom podcast, you have dieted at some point in your life. And you may have been the person sitting across the table saying, I'm low carb, or like, I eat paleo a few years back. It is so important to have empathy, to recognize that if a person is dieting, or if a person is subscribed to diet culture, that they are in diet culture, right? Just very clearly said. So instead of ruling them out completely and just saying no, what I want you to do is say, are they curious and open-minded? Are those characteristics you would say about them? Or are they just black and white, all or nothing? Fuck what you think. I'm low carb and that's the best. That may be a deal breaker. But if they're telling you how they're low carb and they ask like, oh, are you low carb by chance? And that gives you the opportunity to say whatever you want to share, whatever you feel comfortable with. And obviously you have your own journey. So I'm just riffing here. I'm just going off of randomness. But maybe you say, oh no, I have a history of disordered eating. I kind of follow like the intuitive eating principles and I listen to my body. And if he says like, tell me more about that, that sounds really interesting. Or like, I've never heard of that, or, whatever. That's amazing, because we used to be him. I don't know who these people are. I'm totally making up a scenario, but this guy who's low carb and diet culture, we used to be him. But because of our curiosity and our ability to grow and learn, now we're in this non-diet, anti-diet, intuitive eating space. If you rule him out, you miss out on this potential relationship when it's like, he's still curious about your stuff, right? Your intuitive eating and your relationship with food. It's not your job to convince him not to diet. It's not your job to change his mind. It's not your job to tell him dieting doesn't work and he needs to become an intuitive eater. It is your job to state your boundaries of what you need that's going to keep you safe. And I want to encourage you to not rule out every single person that has a food rule or a history with dieting, because then you'd be ruling out yourself too. So like if this guy ruled out everyone that ever dieted, right? That would have been you. So can we stay curious and open-minded and empathetic? Now, again, that I want to stress what the scenario that I'm using is so different than someone sitting there and be like, you need to lose weight. I do keto. I'll help you with your macros. No, fuck that. That crosses boundaries. That's like a whole different thing, right? But I find so many people get discouraged because this guy doesn't even know what intuitive eating is. A lot of people don't, right? We don't need to rule them out because of it. All right. Woo! We got through a lot. 4 pillars, your beliefs about food and body image. We have to start there. Then get really, really, really intentional. What are your goals with dating? What do you want to center on the date? Then I gave my little tips about dating apps, getting to know somebody. Even if it's like you have a meet cute in person, you exchange numbers, and then it's like you're gonna go on a date, you still have that opportunity to text or get to know each other a little bit before the official date. And then characteristics of partner and of self. What are characteristics that you're looking for in a partner, and what are your favorite characteristics about yourself? These things, knowing these things, getting really, really intentional about these things is going to be so helpful. All right. So that was episode 1 of our dating and marriage series. And if you found this helpful and you're like, holy shit, I needed to hear that. 1, I want to invite you back to the rest of the series. And 2, if you're like, okay, when we talked about pillar 1, beliefs about self and food and body, I need support, then I would love to invite you to come on over to findfoodfreedomresources.com. Again, that's findfoodfreedomresources.com. And over there, you're going to find free masterclasses. You're going to find our monthly membership, group coaching, one-on-one coaching mastermind, which is a combination of both. Take what serves you, leave the rest behind. So if you're someone who you need support in addition to social media, again, please come on over to findfoodfreedomresources.com. And if you're loving this series, if you're like, wow, this was really fun, this was like a different spin on intuitive eating and food freedom, please head on over to Apple Podcasts and rate, review, subscribe, leave us a question or two, what you want to see in the rest of the series. The more that you do that, the more people will hear this message. So thank you so, so much for being here, and we'll see you next week.